Tervehdys, Laura.
Terve, Otto.
And welcome everyone to the Spirit of Sauna podcast. This is a podcast where we delve deep into the essence of sauna, löyly. And my name is Otto Kronqvist.
And my name is Laura Fawn. And we are sauna keepers here in the Sipojoki Heritage Sauna.
Yes. And today we actually have a topic that was requested in our Instagram's page. So this is a recommendation for all of you listeners to suggest topics to talk about. And today we will take a tour to the origins of sauna. Like, where does it come from? Where does the word sauna could come from? How far in history can we go with these kind of practices, and many questions. We'll see how many questions we have time to go through, but very fascinating topic. As a historian, I'm trying to find the English translation, but my education is like in social history, I guess is the translation. So for me, this aspect of sauna has always been like very, very much my core interest when coming to study this topic of sauna. How would you like to start?
I could start this by saying that for me, of course, as a Finn, I grew up in sauna. So it was many aspects of the sauna bathing are like, they are so obvious that they have always been like that I've never considered them anything extraordinary, not even significant.
Yeah.
Because they were just so like, of course, yes, you go to sauna, of course you sweat, of course you wash with water, of course you have the rocks and the water and the fire and the löyly coming. That was so like everyday life that nothing to be considered. But at some point, when I heard about this, that there has been actually all over the world different types of sweating procedures.
Yeah.
And for me, this was first time when I came across this was actually in India when I was doing studies in Ayurveda. And when they were so much like glorifying the amazing benefits of sweating, I started thinking, hey, I've been doing this my whole life.
Yeah.
What is this all about?
Yeah. Why is it so special?
And why is it something that is like really emphasized when wanting to look after like health in a more deeper sense?
Yeah, and this is actually quite an interesting point because like in Finland we have quite a lot of exotic practices. Like we're really far up north, and this is also something I didn't realize until I saw a map, I think it was North America, and the cities put into the map of North America. And for example, I'm from Oulu; it's about 600 kilometers north from here, and it was somewhere in middle of Alaska. So thank heavens for the Gulf Stream that we can live here.
Yes.
But for example, when I was a kid, I remember this kind of scene where I was watching maybe a James Bond film or something, and they had a chase scene in the middle of the night, of course, like in the evening, I guess. Maybe it was this episode where James Bond went to Japan, and there was a lot of people watching. And I was wondering, like, okay, so it's a summer, it seems to be very hot weather, and these people are out there in hot weather when it's dark. So why on earth did they wait until 2 a.m. to film this? Like, what's the special thing about why does it have to be dark? Because it didn't cross my mind that in other parts of the world, the night comes at about 6 or 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Not like in Finland, when in the summertime we don't get the sunset at all.
Yeah.
So the similar thing has happened to me, as you said, like with sauna, because as long as I can remember, I think I most probably had my first sauna before I learned how to walk. So nothing could be more ordinary. So it came to me almost as a shock that people around the world, yes, they have been bathing, but they have forgotten this. And in my adult years, I've spent many years trying to sort of walk back the path of sauna throughout the ages. Like what kinds of paths have brought us here at this point?
Yeah. So what have you find in your discovery journey?
Well, I think the turning point was this book. I can show it to the camera. It's Martti Vuorenjuuri, Sauna kautta aikojen. Unfortunately, there's no translation of this book, but it's one of the few sort of historical anthologies which tries to sort of figure out how about having sauna, but also about like how to build a sauna. Like I think it's quite a Finnish perspective, but
yes.
yeah, but it kind of reminds of this same book from the same era. I think this is from the 60s or 70s. And also there was the Mikkel Arland's book Sweat.
Yes.
And well, this you can get from a bookshop for maybe, I don't know, $20. But the Arland's book, I think it's out of print and might cost like 200 or something.
Yes, but I think you can find it online.
Okay.
To be read.
Yes.
Yeah, in PDF form.
Yeah, I found. I think it was one chapter of the book, and of course I've listened to Mikkel many times in podcasts and so on. But these both books really travel back, like way back in the times of, for example, the Indian wisdom tradition. Yes, definitely Ayurveda had the idea of cleansing oneself with some kind of sweat bath. And but I think when these Ayurvedic texts have been written, maybe 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, already at that time it was the most ancient practice. And I would actually go as far as one of the earliest like megalithic sites that we have in the world, Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. It comes, I think it's something like 12,000 years ago. They built this massive area of stone circles. They're still finding them all over that area in the hills. And they used it maybe for 1,000 years and then they buried it. And they buried it pretty well because they only found this place in the 90s. So the German Archaeological Institute finally started digging there and they found these very elaborately carved stone pillars in the shape of like T-shaped form. And it's still an enigma. Why were these built? Why was it buried? And what's the idea of this? And what they did find was that they could carbon date bones on the area from the pits, and they noticed that people came there for rituals. So it was a ritualistic place. Of course, there's a few questions like, for example, how could hunter-gatherers do something like this? Because they just hunt and gather. That was the whole point. They don't do civilization or stuff like this. And the previous theory has always been that we have this hierarchy of needs. Maslow's, this pyramid, which I call a pyramid scheme because it's not, it doesn't really work. Because it seems to suggest that we first have to have extra grain or extra some kind of other extra like surplus food in order to fulfill these needs, these other needs. For example, religious needs in the sense, ritualistic needs. But when we look at the oldest cultures in the world, actually any culture pretty much, still today, Finns built the sauna first. Like if I would be building a house, I would build first the sauna because it's a hard work. So you want to go to the sauna first and then you build the house. And this seems to be have been the thing about the Göbekli Tepe builders as well. They didn't want to build other permanent settlements. They wanted to build their temple area first. And if we sort of widen the idea of sauna from just this kind of sort of like nowadays it's if we look at like Jack Dorsey's sauna, he's a billionaire, and he has this tent sauna where he goes alone. It's the modern sauna in a sense, or it is from in a spa where it's you go there with the clothes on, or at least you don't throw water to the rocks. Or I think this is the most popular sauna. If just looking at the amount of saunas that we have in the world, but in ancient times, sauna was always a temple. So the idea of Finnish saunas, like how far does a sauna go? In Finland, they recently found it's hard to know because we have a pretty wet soil and it sort of eats everything. So we don't find really old stuff, but they did find this sort of possible platform for log building. And I think it was something like 6 to 7,000 years old, or even a little bit older. So when we would put the date of the earliest known sauna, I would put it there. Because if it was a log building, it was more or less a sauna. So like home, sauna, what's really the difference? Because they didn't have a chimney, so they would probably also have rocks inside. If it's minus, I don't know, 40, 50 degrees, you need to have rocks in order to survive.
Yeah, and there are some archaeological findings and historical explanations that maybe even it goes beyond that. Because from the first time that human beings stepped their foot on these lands when the ice was retrieving, there have been it's been said that they used to do this, that they dig a hole into the ground and cover it with a skin, moose skin or deer skin, and then they heat up the rocks outside and carry them and have the bathing done in this way. So I would like to say that this concept of sauna is as old as human race.
Yeah, something like that. It could be, because warming up rocks, what could be more basic?
Yes, and what you were talking about, Göbekli Tepe, this reminded me of this concept that wherever, even when people were hunter-gatherers, even if this would be the concept, that we would be roaming and living in sync with nature. Still, there would be a place for rituals with the rocks and the fire, and this sort of sweat worship would happen. And this concept, I think, is found all over. And the etymology of the word sauna is very interesting, because of course when we're talking about origins of sauna, us Finns, we like to say that sauna is a Finnish word, and it's the most known Finnish word, and it's one Finnish word that has actually been taken into the different languages as it is. So we are very proud of that. But if you look at the word sauna and the etymology of it, there is the different kinds of explanations, and one of them goes to this word. I think it's like maybe nowadays they say it's like Germanic origin or whatever, but the idea there, the word is something like stakka, which actually is almost like stakka, which in Finnish means fireplace. So I like this also.
That's right.
But anyway, that stakka means to pile stones. And the idea of this, that the healing procedures, which actually are the rituals that in any temple or any place of worship we do, we want to harmonize ourselves, and we want to be healthy and feel whole. So this idea of having rocks, sort of the most concrete of anything, and then you gather around them to do your healing rituals. This I feel that it goes even beyond the concept of building a house.
That's right. And when I say temple, that's also this sometimes a misunderstanding, because in Europe, for example, we think about temple, it's some kind of really like big church or like a big mosque or a Hindu temple or something like this. But for example, in traveling in India, people always had this home temple. Very simple. It sometimes might be just a tulasi plant, and you would do the rituals around it, and you would wash clothes and cook and all of this. And this is sort of what I mean with the temple, is that you in the ancient times you might have had, perhaps you had like bigger sauna buildings, who knows. But the most important form of the sauna would be your home sauna, or maybe just your home, which you would use as a sauna whenever needed. And in this sense, this etymology that you're saying is very interesting, because then the stack of stones defines a sauna. If there would be a difference between your home and a sauna is where you have the stones stacked. I've heard sometimes that maybe sauna refers to I'm not also sure whether this word is comes from what is it called, Indo-European languages, or the roots of those, or the Germanic languages, or whether this is a Finno-Ugric language from the ancient times, but savu, smoke. Then if you would think about the ancient Finnish, it could be sau. So then sauna is the place where there's like a smoke sauna, basically. So there's always smoke until you get the rocks heated enough, like just today. We're looking for the red color of the rocks before we then enjoy the ritual, which is to bathe in the sauna. So, but I would also want to add to this idea that, you know, the differences and the similarities between a home and a sauna, because the Sami language knows, and also Finnish language knows, this idea of a kota. So kota is basically many different kinds of models, but the idea is that in nomadic tribes especially, usually you're walking around, but then when you settle for one spot for a while, there should be an easy to build structure to keep you warm, and this structure is the easiest of them all. You just put wood around, and then you put some pelts and whatever to insulate it a little bit, and then you put fire in the middle. So, for example, the Finnish word for home, koti, what I've understood is that it actually refers to the place where the kotas are. So koti is the place where there's many of these kota types of building. So in this sense, it's actually like a tent sauna, basically, because if nothing else, you need the rocks on like around the fire to prevent it from spreading. So you have the rocks anyway, and that's your koti. So for a Finn, pretty much you cannot differentiate. Historically, you cannot differentiate sauna from your home as a concept, or it's very difficult.
And also, if you want to continue the wordplay to go a little bit to the south, then we also have this concept of pirtti, which is another word for our home.
That's right.
We call koti. Home is another word for it, is pirtti. And in the Baltic languages, they called sauna pirts or pirtis. And this is very nice also, the concept of, because when in this area, people started settling down. What we built first was this savupirtti, which is like a smoke pirtti, smoke sauna.
You don't just have a chimney. So
it's a smoke sauna. And so this way also this concept of that the sort of the essence of sauna is what makes out a concept that we have of home. And of course, yes, I like to also think about this, that even now we have two important, most essentially important fireplaces. We have our kiuas, our stove in the sauna, and then we have our fireplace or stove in the kitchen. And so we feed and clean, and these are the two places of worship. Even in the modern houses, even if we use electricity, still the rituals that we perform in eating and then in bathing, this has remained.
And that's so interesting, I think, about the like rituals, because it's a scary word, of course. Think ritual this, ritual that, it sounds like some kind of sorcery or whatever. But when we talk about rituals, I mean like shaking one's hand. That's a ritual, There's things that we do every day, and we know or not know, but sometimes we know the meaning, sometimes we don't, but we still do it. And for example, with the fireplace, there is a ritual where you actually go on your knees to heat up the fireplace or the kiuas in the sauna. So you go on your knees to sort of also enjoy the ritual, and actually there was an interesting thing that I think it was some kind of like a person that works with elderly people noticed that people who still do this, kneeling and picking up the firewood and all of these ritualistic aspects of heating up your home or your sauna are usually healthier in their old age. So I think of course it's physical activity and all this, but I think this ritual holds something really important in it. It's something ancient, something since forever. And for example, with me, when I got my first own wood heated sauna, I truly remember that feeling of kneeling and putting the fire to the kiuas for the first time. It's my own, and I actually had a sauna every day for the next 6 months just because of this. Yeah. But yeah. So what we can gather is that it seems that especially in the northern climate, but all around the world, we can talk about the Japanese culture, the Middle Eastern hammam, the temazcal in South America. It seems that almost like all cultures have some kind of building for a ritualistic activity that involves heating stones all over the world, except maybe something like 100 or 200 kilometer strip in the equator. It seems that they don't have this kind of thing, but we actually talked about this before the episode, and you might have a differing opinion on this.
I little bit, of course, this is something, this is just my own experience, because I have experienced also in that area some smoke rituals where there has been stones and smoke involved, and herbs.
Where was this?
This was in the Gambia.
Yeah.
So I have experienced this sort of healing with the smoke and gathering it in a small room and using herbs, and so the little bit. I'm not yet convinced that that is true. That there hasn't been, because I feel that they still have some practices that are a little bit similar to the concept of the cleaning with smoke, and because we have also had smoke in as an important part of the sauna ritual. Yeah. So this I am not yet convinced, but like I said, this I have no knowledge, or I haven't ever read any research or articles done about this. So I would be interested to hear more, but this is just my own experience that I'm talking about. Yeah.
The interesting part about this Martti Vuorenjuuri's book and also the Oland's book is the very meticulous sort of going through what do we know about sauna. Yes. And this is, it seems like with any kind of like mythological, historical things, the further down from history we go, the more murkier it gets. But then when we look at some of the mythological explanations, like of the origins of the world, and again we need to have this philosophy episode very soon, because there's a really easy sort of presupposition that we have as a culture, like very shorthand presupposition that these ancient people were just superstitious kind of fools who did something and worshipped something in the sky and didn't understand anything. But we couldn't disagree more. Like when I was in India and my yoga teacher was making jokes, he has these great one-liners, and one thing, maybe I even mentioned this in the last episode, was that he said that these guys were smarter than Einstein, and I really agree with this, because when you look at the sort of the framework, the practices, the rituals, the architecture, the mythology, all of these are really, really, really meticulously worked through, almost scientifically. So that's why I would say something like maybe even yoga, but certainly sauna has been a science. So you would have some people who would be specialists in this. Yes. It would be the village elder or something like that. Or you could even have an institution that would be focused on making sure that you could sort of transfer rituals hundreds of years or even thousands of years. And I just actually heard about this Japanese bathing place, which has been in operation for hundreds of years, maybe even 500 years continuously. And perhaps if it wasn't for the Middle Ages and all of this early states and the Christianity and all of this, maybe even in Finland we could have something like this. But there has been so many historical phases in between that has sort of distorted our image when it comes to sauna.
Yeah, and in Finland we have been still lucky ones that we have been sort of hiding in our forest lands and being sort of a little bit safe, and also that the Eastern Church was a little bit maybe lenient, so we have had more room to keep our practices. But in general in Europe we have lost that. But I do think that this the sauna, the concept of the sauna, what we've been talking about, that there is the rocks, there is all the elements, the fire, the water, the air, and the rocks, the earth, and this has been so amazingly intelligent, could I call it, structure, that it has survived even through all these different kind of, could I call it, attacks of the different periods
Plagues,
in our history.
Wars, everything.
Yes, everything. It has survived through all of that because it has reached such an essential key elements, yet in such a simple form that it's almost especially in this area, it has been almost like impossible to strip a human being from everything so much that they would give up their sauna. This has been such a core essence, and I find that it has been like, sometimes I like to think about it like these great structures like the pyramids or this Göbekli Tepe or anything amazing, the Mayan pyramids or whatever has survived through times, Rig Veda that has survived and survived. Sauna is something that has survived in a similar way through all the times, yet still everything when you say sauna, it resonates deep there, and it's sort of also, it is amazing how you can get in contact with a lot of like this sort of traditional wisdom or even quite modern concept of health through the experience of sauna, because it's such a practical place. It's not something, maybe some hieroglyphs in some pyramid, you can look at them and be like, oh wow, how did they build it? But sauna is something so practical. You experience it.
Exactly. You don't have to actually wonder how did they build it or whatever. It's pretty simple. It's just a couple of logs or a tent or something, like just a turvekammi, like this peat, small peat, not even a room, like just a hole in the ground. So like in the north, for example, you don't have wood, so you burn peat and you build the sauna from peat. But I just can't resist this temptation to sort of compare sauna with yoga and the history of yoga, because we can look at the history of yoga all the way to the Indus Valley civilizations and find the Pashupati seal, where you have like the image of Shiva in a meditation posture and so on, and then we can sort of dismantle this yoga myth that 5,000 years ago there was this guy called Shiva and he taught yoga. Now here in the gym in Los Angeles, that's it. So it wasn't like this. It's been a very multifarious 6,000-7,000 years at least. And the yoga that we're doing today, it's mostly modern yoga. Like when we think about, this is so ancient, it's probably less than 100 years old. Like when you look at the yoga literature, like just the studies, what modern yoga scholars do, you notice that so many yoga styles originate from the 60s. So our perception of time is even sort of skewed when it comes to yoga, but also it is skewed when it comes to sauna. So you said that the Finnish people, it resonates somewhere, but sort of what Finnish people know about sauna, what is a sauna, it's from the 60s. Because when we think about the 1920s, all of the saunas in Finland were smoke saunas. There wasn't even a concept of a chimney in a sauna. That was a very foreign idea. And in the 20s, they started to build these, and this sort of modern, iconic Finnish sort of this log building with what is it called, like a roof, which is like not a flat roof, but like,
pointed roof,
something like that. That actually comes from the Swiss Alps. It was a pioneering, like Martti Vuorijuuri tells, that it was a pioneering design from like that was applied in Finland in the 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
So Finns would say this is the, like traditional sauna, this is the ancient sauna, it's like this when they have in their home some kind of like this. Oh, fine, you can say that, but it's not true.
Yeah.
In the same way that someone who goes to a yoga class in gym say, oh, this practice is from 5,000 years ago, it is not.
Yeah.
So we can actually just look at the history like critically as well and think about, and what we're actually trying to do in this podcast is exactly go through all of this noise and go to the essence of sauna. And the essence is there. It's the löyly. And the löyly is something that has traveled throughout the ages from the dawn of humankind. In these latitudes, at least, people have needed to have a room where you can invoke the spirit, in a sense, in a ritualistic sense. And of course, we still emulate it. And that's the funny part. Even if you cannot pour the water to the rocks, even if you go to the sauna with your clothes on, you know, there is still that idea of the room where there's some kind of ritualistic behavior. So something has the essence is still findable. And in the same way, when you go to a yoga class, even if the yoga teacher just made the system up yesterday, still there's some kind of essence with breathing, with movement and all of this that you can sort of uncover from there. And if you're lucky enough, then you can find a traditional system that it can actually even help you to understand the mythology behind that. Mythology behind the sauna or mythology behind yoga. And the Indians were like the Finns of the south. They were really stubborn. And they said, we're not going to give up this ancient system that we have. And then the Brits said, yes, you are. They do a pretty good job. But they couldn't weed out this traditional culture. But in Finland, they could. That's the sad part about Finland, is that we're not wisdom keepers in this sense. The Finnish traditional culture has not survived. The rituals, the sort of mouth-to-mouth, oral tradition, the community, all of this is absolutely gone. So we don't have it, but we can try to revive it.
Yeah, I would say that it's the last 2 generations maybe have done a lot of work to lose it.
Yeah.
But going back just few generations, there were still practices kept up. Because speaking with people actually like just 2-3 generations ago, sauna was still even in the practical minds of people a place of worship. It is, I would say, very, very recent turn of events in Finland. Maybe after the world wars, who knows, this has changed. But I would say that we are in this situation that it's not very far where we have to fetch the keys to our own wisdom. So it's like we've gotten the keys to the parking lot, so we can just run and get them. Because it's not many generations ago that we were still practicing here quite strongly, actually, because the church and hospital wasn't in every village, and people were in this sort of, okay, the buildings might have changed a little, but the löyly, the sacredness of sauna was understood, I would say. It's just that in the past 2-3 generations we've done such a good job to forget it that it has been lost. But
maybe let's try to navigate this. We might have a little bit of a disagreement here, and it's actually very fruitful, because then we can probably get to the essence of this as well. I agree with this. Certainly there has been the practices, sort of if we think about a wisdom tradition, then you have, it's like a peanut, you have the core and then you have the shells. And what I've sort of witnessed when looking at text, looking at like what kind of documents we have left and all of this, I've noticed that maybe in the 16th century something really dramatic happened. Maybe it was the introduction of the school system. Maybe it was the introduction of the hospital, doctor, patient system. maybe it was like the continual sort of wars that started in the 16th, 17th century in Finland that sort of removed the community that you need in order to uphold this core of your tradition. So easily it might become this situation that, you know, you don't have any kind of community that is studying this, sort of the scientists. You don't have any kind of maybe your rulers don't know anything about this. Maybe they just rule you for power or money or these kind of reasons, which didn't seem to be the case in the ancient times. And then what happens is that families take these shells. They use these shells, and then probably what happened in most families is that they started to become superstitious. So superstition is, in my view, it is the combination of the shells of your tradition and the sort of rotten core from another, like a more modern way of looking at things. So, for example, thinking that somebody will punish you from the skies up from your actions, it's surprisingly modern thing. I don't think that the Christians 1,000 years ago had this concept at all. It doesn't seem like that at all. They were thinking way more in terms of a living world and where you can partake in this world with your ritualistic actions, and not like, if I think the wrong thoughts, there will be lightning from the sky and kill me. And in this way, the shells of the Finnish tradition, the runes, the sauna practices and all of this, they were still practiced because of their benefits. But the core had been forgotten, and it might have been already forgotten maybe 1,000 years ago. It's hard to say when it actually happens and what was the reasons, but this is sort of how I view these things. What would you think about this?
We are in the situation that we can only make our own interpretations according to because they are the material that we have to do our interpretations on. They have been written down and collected by people who had their own motives.
Yes.
and
prejudices and all
yes.
this. Yeah.
So that way we cannot really know what was like, for example, somebody practicing somewhere. We cannot know anything actually about that person. So but I do understand very well what you are saying, and that is certainly a big possibility. Yet in that way, I do believe that sauna was, or this actually I would now say sauna as a temple for löyly was in that way a very how would I say, smart or inventive way of carrying that wisdom through, even that maybe nobody knew the science, or maybe nobody knew, but the practice itself is so strong that it carries the essence. For example, just the basic understanding of this idea of basic elements of life. That is, you start looking at any health or how would you say, healthcare practices anywhere in the world. They have this concept of basic elements, and I have been always amazed how sauna has managed to bring it even into the practical life of modern human being. And you can sort of, even if you don't understand, you still practice it right. And you get to the sort of essence. So in that way, I a little bit disagree. Because I feel that there has been such a strong practice that it carries through. Even these misunderstandings and confusing times.
This is why I would still uphold this conversation between yoga and sauna. Because when you look at the history of yoga or the South Asian like wisdom traditions, then you notice that a couple of thousands of years ago, they started to develop this sort of rendition called Buddhism. So the idea of Buddhism was that they knew that there would be difficult times. For some reason, they knew that it's not going to last forever, what they had. Like, think about, it's something like the Roman bath culture. Think about India. That's how yoga was in India, maybe a couple of 3,000 years ago. You would have massive institutions, universities, all of this. And at some point they noticed this will not last. As they say in Puranas, the leaders will be corrupted, and you cannot trust any teacher anymore, and you need a practice that you can practice with yourself and with your significant other and your children and maybe the small community around you, but that the society as a whole will not support your practice anymore. So I think something like this has happened to sauna exactly in the same way, that we still have sort of had the sort of Buddhists of sauna approach here in Finland. But I think actually still in the Middle Ages, like sauna was the most common thing in Europe.
Yes.
Like the Roman baths, that culture, it wasn't like that because that kind of huge infrastructure projects wasn't done anymore. But like if you look at this Vuorenjuuri's book, there's plenty of material from all the countries of the Europe about holding a sauna. Once in a while they would think it's beneficial, once in a while they would think it's the source of plague, and they would forbid sauna and then allow it again and so on. But at some point sort of it went over the top with sort of this. Well, of course there was a reason. There was the Black Plague, and it sort of decimated everything. So at some point they said, okay, we will ban it. That's it. But maybe like sort of the Finnish stubbornness comes from the fact that no bans could ban the Finnish sauna. Like maybe the cities in Europe, which were growing quite fast in the 16th, 17th century, you could enforce this kind of ban, and you would force out all the sauna keepers. Also, the sauna keepers usually they're quite rich. It's cheap. You just put firewood inside, and there's hundreds of people coming in, and it's easy to stop like this kind of actions. But then Finland is almost an uninhabitable place. Like people would have the sauna wherever in the middle of the forest, and you cannot do that. So sort of we kept this. And also we kept our wisdom tradition quite long compared to the Europeans, for example. The superstition phase came way earlier in other parts of the world than here.
Yeah. And for me, it was a very small detail, but a nice detail was one teacher of mine who does this blood cupping, wet cupping. And she told me that she has a lot of Muslim clients, and how she has found that this Islamic culture, the hammam bathing culture, and then they have this very, very, like for me, it was actually really like amazing how close connection it is actually, how the cupping is done, and what sort of the moon cycle and everything what is considered in these traditions. And for me that was also something that led me further on in my search for the origins of sauna, because I realized that actually truly the hammam culture that is still in one way or another surviving in some same way that this then it's the southern culture and then this northern culture here in the form of sauna. And we have so for me this tells the story about how it has been a very like sort of global understanding of human health ritual.
Yeah, that's right. And many anthropologists, and well, not many but some have tried to sort of figure out how on earth is this possible. Like, did the Finns travel somewhere to Siberia to be in contact with the American Indians, because they also have this sweat lodge culture, but that completely misses the point. When we look the human history all the way back, like one would say like Göbekli Tepe, which is like at least 10,000 12,000 years ago, even when looking at those stone pillars, we can notice there's some mythological creatures. There's some possibility to become in tune, in this sense, with these people, these ancient people, through their mythology. If you can understand what they're trying to say to us, and sort of they were trying to deliver a message throughout the ages. They would transmit this message to their own children and their community, and they would transmit, and so on and so on. And there was, and the argument of mine, and also what I learned from yoga tradition, is that there was a core in these teachings, and that core involves this, or sauna involves the core, sort of. So for me, it's no wonder that they would have this practice all over the world. It's just a sort of a application of their worldview, or even I would be willing to go so far as to say their science, their way of making sense of the world. And it wasn't superstitions at all. They were really aware of many of the phenomena, such as how does water vapor make you healthy? Like, I'm pretty sure they would have a very meticulous understanding of sort of, if we look at like Indian medicine or Chinese medicine, they know a lot of stuff about our inner organs and all of this. Yeah. And they would have ways to refine this through the architecture of the sauna, but also like the practices and the rituals, and honing them and transform them to the next generation.
Yeah, and this goes nicely to the origins of sauna, because in the Finnish or the Baltic Finnish mythology, origins of sauna are in the forest. They are very well defined. Which woods you use to heat the sauna, where do you get the rocks for the sauna, what kind of water to use for different types of purposes. So what you were describing, it was truly a very, a scientific approach. It was very well known that different things have different impacts, and for different type of purposes you need to have your elements or the you have to construct your ritual with different types of materials to perform a ritual for different purposes.
Yes.
And this is, I feel that we have a lot of information in the archives, and that this was a very sophisticated practice.
Yes. And this is why it is possible to revive this culture. It's actually part of our job, what we do here.
Of course.
It's that we're really very passionate about this.
Yes.
And that's why we, and also like I might add to the previous comment, is that the sauna building in itself, like you notice there's different kinds of smoke saunas in West Finland, East Finland, North Finland, all of this. So they would use the sauna building because they use it for many purposes. For example, drying meat, washing clothes, washing the dead, giving birth, all of these activities. And the sauna architecture would reflect this, like which practices are in use in this part of the country. So not just what we do in the sauna itself, and the whole sort of everything that revolves around
how it's built, where it is built, and what is it built with. And this we also have very beautiful runes to do with how to build a sauna.
That's right.
It's a very, very deep and vast concept of this architect of the sauna.
Yeah.
That in itself.
And very integral part of also the Finnish mythology.
Yes.
One could even say that a couple of the runes say that the world was born out of the sweat of Väinämöinen. Yeah. So that's what we do when we sing in sauna. We usually say Hiki vanhan Väinämöisen. Yes. So that's what we also do when we pour the first löyly. We salute the sweat of sort of the creative universe. Mm-hmm. Wow, but yeah, I think we got sort of the gist of it, of this origins of sauna in this episode. What do you think?
Yeah, I think maybe both of us, we could say in one sentence, summarize the origins of sauna. Yeah. How would you say? What is the origins of sauna?
The origins of sauna, for me, is as old as the origins of humankind. It has always a ritualistic element, and that's why it carries from millennial to the next. So that's pretty much my try right now to define it. How would you? What would you say?
Well, nicely said. I would maybe say that sauna's origin is forest, and forest is life itself, nature. For sauna's origin is nature, and sauna is where you harmonize yourself with this great nature.
Nice. Okay, so we'll end with this, and again, if you liked what we're talking about, just hit that subscribe button in YouTube or Spotify. And yeah, thanks so much about the encouraging comments on the first episode. You can always suggest topics that you would like to hear about, and yeah, next week we'll meet again and talk.
We continue. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.